AEC Business, the construction industry's innovation and technology show.
Hello and welcome to AEC Business. My name is Arni Heiskanen, and in this episode we will discuss open source software development for the AEC industry. And my guest is chairman and initiator of the OpenAEC Foundation. Maarten, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am 40 years old, married, 2 children, and I'm a structural engineer from profession. Originally, I'm still doing some calculations like 1 day a week, I think, generally. And the rest of the week, I'm busy with the companies I'm involved in and also in the open source development.
As I said, we will talk open source software. Yeah. And there's this OpenAEC Foundation. What's the story behind that?
When I started my own business 17 years ago, I was already triggered by the idea of open source software. So I tried to start from scratch with fully open source business. So I started with a Linux computer, with LibreOffice, with Thunderbird, and I think I kept it working for like 3-4 weeks, and then I get stuck in all kind of bugs in Linux, in corrupt LibreOffice files, and all other kind of problems. And there were also some specific structural engineering programs which I couldn't get working on Linux, so I forgot about it and I switched to Windows. But then this idea was always with me, and I have always tried to use as much open software as possible. So like 12 years ago, I started to do some programming myself. And from 2017, I started some open source projects myself regarding integration of GIS with BIM. So it was mainly an addition on Revit, where you can load GIS information inside of Revit. And that was my first sort of open source project. And it was also my the way I got introduced into the open source community and learned all the programmers who are also involved in this and had the same compassion and the same passion. And it's also the same philosophy from that moment already, like pre-AI, that was like philosophy that we should own the code of the software you use should be made public available. And there are a lot of good reasons for that. One is that, sometimes people say, is open source software reliable? Well, closed software, you don't know if it is reliable because you have no idea what's actually happening under the hood. And with open source software, you can check the code yourself and make your opinion based on that. So that's one reason. And the other one is that you can make the software the way you exactly want it, so that it does not give you limitations in your progress, what you do as a technician, as an architect, as an engineer, or even it's not limited to the AEC. It's a broader vision and philosophy, I think. When God gives you a certain talent to do a thing, then you should then share that with all humanity and not keep that for yourself. Of the last couple of years, I've tried in Corona times, like 5 years ago, I was already involved in the FreeCAD community and in the Blender and Bonsai community. I also had some meetings with the chairman of Blender Foundation, Stol Roosendaal, which is for me is a big example personally, because he was like a pioneer, open source pioneer, and Blender is, I think, one of the most successful open source projects in the world, together with Linux. But in the AEC, it's definitely a very nice example of how you can have a solid foundation with over 30 employees working with a solid income, that open source, that you can build a business model around open source. And then I got the idea in 2021, like, okay, it would be nice if we have a foundation to fund the development of open source software in the AEC, especially regarding the BIM modelers. That was personally my aim. I tried to get funds. I had a lot of talks with big companies, like big contractors, big architects' office. Even at the Build, we had talks with like international architects' offices, like over 5,000 employees. And the conclusion was that like everyone find this a very nice idea, but they were not going to pay for it, because this is like this thing that they say, okay, what we believe is that if you just spend a like if you take all the license money you spend as a company, and if you just would pay, I think 5% or 2% to that to one other foundation, which is developing open source software, then you would have better software than the 100% you pay, which goes, a lot of this money goes to shareholders or goes to like big tech, who is just buying up other startups so that they're not going to compete with them. So this, in a way, it's a sort of wasting of our money. And if we have just a little percentage of that, then we could make that better. But it is almost impossible, I found out, to get people to donate this money, because donation is at the end a weak thing where people, it's difficult for them. For big companies, a lot of people are complaining about license costs, a lack of development, a lack of influence on the tools they have. Architects will complain about the tools, they don't give them enough freedom. Property owners would complain about binary closed file formats where their buildings are in, and there are a lot of these issues, I think. Yeah, so that was the nice thing, that within FreeCAD community, within Blender community, Bonsai community, there are quite some people who have the same ideas. And it's also something, I didn't really discover why, but it's also in the Netherlands, because I don't know why we like the open source idea very much. So there are quite some, like Python is invited by a Dutch guy, and Blender, and there's quite some, I've seen OpenShell also started by someone from the Netherlands. So it's something in our country why we like it. I don't know why, but that's. And then last year, I had a guy working in my company, like last October, and I was following AI, of course, already for the last years, and did some things with it and try it, and but not really using it in the operation. And then I had a guy who was on RAD last October, and he made an MCP server with Blender, with Claude, so like a half year ago. And this guy did not know anything about GIS, and not hardly anything about Python, but he knew quite a lot about Blender. And then he was like 3 days busy with Blender and MCP server, and he just generated a complete 3D environment of a place in the Netherlands. And he did not really understand how he did it, but he did it. So that was for me the sort of point that I saw, whoa, this is going to change everything.
Some have said that AI kills open source because
No, this will be like AI will let open source win the battle.
okay, yeah, because that's I also think that it's not going to kill open source, but rather enable new levels of open source.
I know some people who closed source their projects because they don't like the idea that an AI or a closed source company is getting their knowledge from their open source project. That's one way to look at it. Someone else is just refusing to use AI because it's also involving the pleasure of open source, that you're just making some code and then it's working. It gives a certain satisfaction. That's one part of it. With AI, that's changing, because since I use AI, like since 7 months, I did not code anything anymore. I just stopped coding. So if you have your fulfillment about coding, then AI has a disadvantage, because why should you code if you can do it like hundreds of thousands times faster with AI? So the direction of this lab is definitely that, okay, perhaps there are still some problems with code quality right now. That's one point. But over 3 months, they're solved. And then the code will be much better than any programmer ever did. That's one point. The other point is that then people complain, yeah, you don't know how the code is working. I can tell you that a lot of closed source software, even like with the foundation, we are currently focusing on little niche programs, like cost calculation program, or a heat loss studio. It's like doing heat loss calculations. A lot of these programs, they are like developed 20 years ago or 30 years ago in an old language. The main developer of that does not work anymore at that company, which is currently still selling it. they also don't have the knowledge anymore of the thing they are selling. And if they want to change something, that's always a big project because no one dares to touch the core because it's okay, now it's working and don't touch it because otherwise we have problems. So that argument is also, I mean, there you can say a lot about the other side of the argument.
Okay. So if I go to open aec.com, your website, I see already over 20 different applications.
Yeah.
How did these come about? Who's developing these?
Well, there are like now 12 people are working on that. So perhaps it's good to give some background information about it. We were already having some of these projects were already there before AI. So we were working on that without AI, and most of the ideas we had already before AI started. But then it were just ideas, and we could not have any chance of making that reality. In Christmas and New Year, I decided to go for this because I think it is now the right moment because you have some learning curve, and then now the AI is already like now the new Opus from Claude is really getting incredible fast. So I think that it is the moment where this is like the AI adaptation year, they say, and next year will be revolution. I personally think that everything which is built on services, every market built on services will have a reshuffle. So I do myself like 5 of the tools roughly. The most of the ideas came from me and my colleague. And now I do like OpenCalc Studio, OpenPDF Studio, I'm working on it. But we also have some other people in our company who are doing some of these tools. There are the tools, but there are also tools in development. We have also skill packages for Claude. There are all sorts of things. And at the beginning of this year, I also started a company. It's called Impatio Studio. And now we are currently on the brink to split that up in 2 parts because Impatio Studio was very broad. We did also a lot of ERP Next is like the ERP system we use. That's an existing open source project. And now we decided to split it up. So we will have, in the new situation, we will have OpenAEC Studio, which will be a normal company. And then we have Impatio Studio, which will focus on ERP. So that's a different topic, actually. That's like a different category. So I think over like 4 weeks, it will be finalized. And then we have OpenAEC Foundation, which will do the development of the tools. And then we have OpenAEC Studio. That's a commercial company. And I have now, I funded everything. It was quite a funny story, actually. Like I funded everything myself. And I almost went bankrupt, to be honest. And I was just saved by the bell like a couple of weeks ago by a big investor. Because this is like saving I was just convinced of the idea, but I did not have like a business model from day one. So it was do a lot of time investment and also hire guys in who were doing development, programmers even, because we have some programmers who are really into the architecture. So they define the architecture. They have all kind of code rules, and they also check the things which we publish. So some of them are just like professionals who do the vibe coding, because that's now the new thing. I personally think that the real revolution of the AI is that your programmer skills, they don't have a lot of value in for most of the people. Some of them are still needed to understand what's happening, but the real value is now more in that you are an end user in your field of industry, and that you have a good knowledge about your profession, and that you have creativity about how the tools in the ideal world in your industry should be like. That's the skill package which really makes sense now. And if you cannot program, that's not a problem. The way I see it now, but it's also a journey. And I think that like with the come of AI, all intellectual property, the whole idea of intellectual property in software is like a thing of the past. You can put it in a museum, and every company who has like something in their books with IP, they should write it off in the coming years. And that's not a business model you can build on anymore. Your business model is more in like services with AI services on top of your software, storage, consultancy, SLAs, these things, that will be the future business model in IT, but not the intellectual property of a tool. That does not have that much value anymore, because anyone can make them. And I'm also aware that we are using Claude mainly. We also have some local AIs, some Gwen models, and we can go quite far with them already. Like, I think we can have up to 70% of the intelligence of Claude. But another thing I'm thinking that there will be a tools explosion. That's already happening now. So internally in companies, there's tool explosions. Especially the super users are making tools for everything. And usually they don't have a very good backend, so that's a problem. But that's also something these guys who are developing, they're also learning. So it's also an educational process in a way, I think. Our vision is that the old idea of BIM, it's already very old, like I think 30 years old probably, or 25 years old, is that we have one model in IFC language, and that everything is related to that model. That's what the goal that's what we want to achieve. So it's the whole AEC, even the civil engineering, because I think if you only take one of them, then it's not going to work. It needs to be the whole industry. And the nice thing is that now with IFCX, that within the IFCX format, we have the ability to create extra namespaces and parameters. It's allowed to do that actually.
So IFCX is your version.
That's our language.
Yeah.
And it will be the language like for every file format, for every tool, it will be the language. It will even be the language of the APIs. Everything will be done in that language. So that is completely one. And even if it is not, everyone is like focusing on the BIM modeler, the Revit replacement, the ArchiCAD replacement. We are not doing that. We are just waiting because I think the AI is also not good enough in this moment. I think that why we use now a 1 million context model, I think you need like a 7 million perhaps or something like that. When you really want to do that on a good way, or if you don't want to spend too much time with it. So we don't do anything yet with the BIM model, we're just waiting. But with the other ones, all these other tools are around we have the BIM model, but there are a lot of things around the BIM model. There are like the quotations, the cost calculation. So we have an OpenAEC Studio, it's a cost calculation program. The cost calculation is saved in IFC. We have now, by example, a CPT viewer. And then we also have a way of storing a CPT in IFCX. I also see like in the 2D deliverables, like what we do now in DWG or in DXF. We have a first version, but it's all very heavy development. But it's about a vision is that also the deliverable is also IFCX 2D. And even a PDF will be an IFCX at the end. So the way I see it is that you have the model, the BIM model of the building or the environment or a city even. It can be very big. It can be tens or hundreds of gigabytes at the end. Now, a lot of things around in the project can be PDF reports. If it is like a calculation from a structural engineer, or it can be a heat loss calculation. It can be like a report of the soil. It can be an inspection report. It can be all kind of things which are PDF files and they are stored somewhere in document management system. So I think there should be not a document management system because every deliverable is an intelligent deliverable, but it can be live or frozen state. So in the ideal world, all these things are live linked to the BIM model, and you change something and everything will be changed. So if I change the consequence class of a building, then it's also changed in the report of the engineer, because the report is also stored in IFCX format. all these things are there stored in. But we can also have frozen deliverables, so that it has a certain state with a date, and it can have another date with changes and all these things. And then you can also, when I have a cost calculation, I save it as what we now decided. Well, my idea now is that everything is IFC language, but now we have the heat loss studio, we save it as IFC energy, or I save it as .ifc geo, because you want to see with your file extension, with program, you need to open it. So if everything is IFCX, you have no idea where you should open it, which program, but they have the same structure. So if you have, at the end, we will have like an IFC graph database actually, and with the IFCX, which is saved in JSON, it will be, you can have a lot of these files, they are sort of together, also on a Git, so you can see every change. Nowadays, people have, they have like option 1, 2, and 3 for a client, so that should be natively in every file format, I think, so that you can make in the same file, you can make 3 options. But in the ideal world, your diffs are saved in that file or in that server, depends where you store it, so that you can see your whole history. You can go back to any point in time. And they also can have linked data, so that your project information can be also taken from another IFC file, where that's like the single source of truth for your project information, for example. And there's also like calculation studio. So that's like sort of, for structural calculations, we're working on that. Yeah.
As you said in the beginning, that you found it that companies had concerns about supporting this idea. How do you now see the possibility that they will eventually start using this? Because I feel that this is a radical change to the way they are now approaching software and acquiring software and using it. It means changes in business models for software companies, but also for the users. It's a big step. So how do you see this succeed?
Yeah, it's now slowly getting some people abroad, but it's still very focused on the Netherlands. But you have to start somewhere, okay, and then it can expand. Some big companies in the Netherlands, they have said, okay, we support your vision, and we want to make that public, that we support the vision. So they're like some big contractor companies, some big architect companies, from all different types of companies, they support it. So that was a very important point to start, because then you can say to other people, like, okay, they support this, and they want to make it public as well. So that was like step 1. Now we have an investor on board. It's like from the Fondor Group. It's a big, like more than 2,000 employees, a very big company in the Netherlands. They support it financially also, so we have quite some money to go on with this. The way I see it is that you have like OpenAEC Foundation. It's a non-profit, and it's also not, now currently I am sort of in charge of it, but I will let it go. I don't want to be the sole decision maker in it. So it's going to be a community project. It's now already happening slowly. There's some like now some people from Turkey are also getting into the community. So I see that this is going to be a community. And first, we want to focus on everything, but not on the BIM modeler. So all the other things around it, because a lot of people don't focus on this part, and I want to focus on this part first. What we want to do with the foundation, that we can also have like subsidies, but we can also have support from the industry. The same way how the Blender Foundation is doing it, that's how we want to do it. So we want to have all ways of income, so that this is self-sustaining foundation, and the goal of it is first now the development of all these tools, and then on the long term it will be like the maintenance of it, that they can have like a support for it, and also organize it. They will have own developers. They will do it like the Blender Foundation is doing it, but then not on the 3D program, but the other tools. I think at the end of the year, that's what I hope, is that it is like more self-sustaining, or that we have the idea how it's going to be self-sustaining. And now for this year, There are already quite some users, but it now is also a lot of testing. But we are good on track to make the initiative solid enough, I think, to gain that trust in industry. It's also a mind shift, I think. Generally, the mind shift of what I described to you, that IP is a thing of the past, but a lot of business owners, they don't see it yet. And then you always have, like with all transitions, you will have a group of early adapters, of easy followers. That will also be the case in this, but I think it will go faster than a normal transition because of the speed is so incredible. That's like you went to bed and you wake up and there are like 4 innovations in AI.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but so thank you very much for this opportunity to learn more about your initiative, and I'm looking forward to what will happen, and maybe we can chat again next year.
Yeah, that would be very nice. Yeah,
follow up.
But there's one last thing that would be nice one to mention. Like we have, that was a community project actually. Like there's a guy from it's Hakan, he's called, and he made like it's called OpenCAD Studio. So it's not, I did not make it myself. So he made it with Rust actually, because Rust is now a very interesting program language. When you have like the high-speed tools, then Rust is very good because it's very fast. So he made OpenCAD Studio, which is only like 30 megabyte, I think. So you can just open the WG files, and this is really getting traction now. And also the PDF Studio, that's also one which is very fast growing in popularity. So there are some fast growing things, and and also like in the OSR community, we are getting noticed that the initiative is there, and there are also like some people who support it, like Diane Mold, for example, and other ones. So hopefully that will also help us, because our community needs to grow. That needs to be like more go bigger and more mature, and also feedback would be very valuable from different users, because like we started it from the Netherlands, but we want to make these tools international. But they're not limited to our country, but that they are broad, and they are of all a certain architecture, like an extension system, so that everyone can build an extension on top of them. So they're quite generic to make them, hopefully the future.
Okay, so once more, thank you, and let's talk again.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast and visit aec-business.com, the award-winning blog, for more news and stories.